Yeah. So, guys, I was asked to make an updated review on Jiho, especially since mine was pretty old and it was before she even had her EE. So, let's get started. First thing we're gonna see, her positions are in backline or center mid. There's actual value in putting her in center mid, but that's more an end game style, and backline is more the standard thing. I will later on explain how to put her in center mid after I explain how her skills work. If we look at her skills, stats, I mean, actually, technique is actually the second. Speed is first, technique, vitality, then power, who means she will have high speed, high reflex, decent survival, and weak damage. But we can ignore the fact that she has weak damage just because of her very first skill. So let's get straight into the skills. Starlight amplification free, power up, increase attack power by 25%, critical rate by 25%, accumulates up to 3 times. I know there's a lot of issues with this skill in game as it keeps trying to accumulate itself multiple times. So yeah, just don't take it personally. Some people didn't even max it out. I honestly think it's worth it. Just because one skill is going to give her 75% crit rate, 75% attack power, it does seem pretty chill. Transversing Starlight 2. Increase critical damage by 20% and penetration by 20% of allies within the vertical line. Now, this is something that is going to be very valuable and at the same time can have a lot of value in COT too. So in PvP, you always want to line this up right behind the striker from either backline or midline, just because that's going to be buffing his damage, and penetration is especially valuable for strikers. For certain COT comps where you can't get out of backline, you would usually put her in midline and you would make her face the player who you were hoping to get out, for example, a Kuril, a Duke, a Leia, whatever you're trying to penetrate outside with. Also, a good strat is put that in the center mid position in that COT kind of scenario. Like this, the goalkeeper is also part of it, so she gets the buff. Luminance Starlight. Decrease the enemy team's action speed by 30% and critical resistance by 15% for 3 minutes when being attacked. Now, pretty much the action speed's the value. Critical resistance is pretty weak, and also, why is there this weird emote? I don't know. So pretty good actually. There's no loss value here. But this does mean you want her to be attacked, and especially if you're putting her in backline, that means facing the striker. If you're putting her in midline, that's center mid, but again, that's more for a specific kind of thing. Spreading Starlight 2. Increase max life by 15%, critical damage resistance by 15%, and decrease incoming damage by 15%. So it's pretty much a nice totem that does everything, except it does have critical damage resistance, not critical rate or critical resistance. So this is actually very powerful. Again, this has great synergy with Duran and the Jiho Ace. On top of it, if you could throw in a Shaman and a Shaman active, this is completely broken, and this is kind of close to what I'm thinking of building. So yeah, very powerful. Chain-wise, who does she have? So she has an affection with Bell. I mean, it's some rainbow teams. That's not that bad. One with Chudo in mono order. He's actually very strong and has a lot of potential. So not a bad chain. Friendship. Death Queen. Again, mono order is very happy. I don't know why you'd have Nerua and Jiho on the same team. That is kind of weird. Maybe one or two specific comps could run this. Maybe the Glade rainbow shit. Even then, I'm not going to advise that as a great chain. Jump if you know what you're doing once again. Competitive, Elaine, yeah, still some value. Duran, man, this will activate. This will activate 99% of the time. You don't even need to question it. The minute you own Duran, you know this will be permanently active. He's everywhere in endgame PvP. PvE, not as much. Fighting Spirit, who's like Nemesis. I hate that they change the names. Yeah, this is the Mono Thunder. Then even then, you won't see this. So pretty much what you're going to be awaiting is depending on how you build it, and Duran. So competitive, there's a huge chance this thing's going to be active like 90% of the time. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm thinking of sticking in a Duran. Now, how are we going to build her? So this is something that's going to be very technical to where you're placing her. So I was explaining earlier how she could be used as center mid. And the reason I can't even speak English anymore. The reason we think of putting her as center mid or one of the sides is to try to force the enemy team to penetrate her, to use the decreased action speed combined with some speed backs. This can be very powerful and allow the enemy team to barely ever be able to shoot. This is a pretty good strat, but you need to know exactly what you're doing and the way you manage it. You would usually try and make her die, but give some bonuses. So for example, you would make her weak and fast, and you would give her the new Thunder unique that would do a damage increase on the goalkeeper. So that's kind of how you would run her. Or you could run EMB until you get the damage increase stone. Again, this is a bit more common in PvE content and in certain PvP matches when you know what you're doing. So again, I don't advise running this unless you are fully aware of what's going on. Then if you're putting her in backline, you don't care what the placements are, it's facing the striker. It's really simple. You find the striker, you make them shoot on her because you want to stack this skill. 3 minutes is a pretty long time in endgame, and reducing someone's speed by 30%, especially if they don't have speed buffs, is insane. So you want it on. Stone wise, now I'm gonna say again, it really depends what your team is running. You do want to know though that she is gonna be burning spirit every single time she holds the ball because of the 2 minute thing, and she doesn't care that she's max stacked. So a lot of people are really gonna be insisting on the fact of giving her a form of spirit gen. Now, for the Spirit Gen, there are multiple options. As you see, she has the Ardor slot. So, of course, you can think of Ardor Dribble. Or if you want to be a little bit more original, you can actually go for the Thunder Unique. That's pretty much what I'm doing myself, so I can actually just show it off, making it easier to explain. Again, mine isn't fully maxed out, and I'm still working a little bit out the kinks, so yeah. But pretty much, yeah, this is what I'm running. Lightning Speed. Increase reflex, therefore you don't need to give her any other reflex stones. Gives her spirit for a critical hit, knowing that she has the power up active and that she has approximately, it's a little bit higher than this because again this looks at 6-star, so it should be around a 53% critical rate by base. Don't forget that managers will buff that maybe 2-3 more percent. Add another 75, and you can have maybe even a single line buffer who increases it, and you're like already at 150% crit rate. So you're pretty good, well off to be able to use lightning speed. This will stop any chance of being counter reflexed. Combine that with exploding inferno dribble. Again, it's going to increase a lot of damage when she's penetrating. I did look, since I'm putting her facing the striker, for some really good defensive subs. As you can see, a damage decrease 7%. There's some penetration, critical rate, and receiving pass effect because she'll be receiving a pass when she penetrates back out. For lightning speed, again, decreased damage 7%, dribble, crit resistant, action speed, max live, and again, decreased damage 5.6. I have better ones, but they're on Duke, and I'm not taking those off. So yeah, that's why this one's kind of the weaker one. And for the last slot, what I was personally thinking, just in case they have like a critical resistant line, is to put the Thunder Crit Stone. Just like this, she's really spirit generating, and she's going to be able to help the team on that front too. Now again, if for any reason you don't have enough reflex on your team, as again, my midline is very heavy on debuff with Celestia and Metatron, you might actually want to instead run Fontish Tissue Sample in the dark slot. You can leave the Ardor Dribble Stone. It's always great to have some spirit generation just to counter the fact that she's going to burn some. And then you're going to be able to do whatever you want with the Thunder, the Prime slot. You can always throw another form of, I keep forgetting the name, the thing that counters reflex that FTS has. So basically a dark penetration or a dark speedstone are fine in the prime slot. And for Thunder, again, up to you. I would say since you're at it, Thunder critical, Spirit Gen, never hurt. And you want her to crit just because it's going to be really nice. Not to mention that she herself is going to give herself critical damage 20%, meaning she's at a 70% damage buff from her own critical damage. She comes with penetration built in. She's going to buff her own attack. So overall, she's going to be able to do some serious damage if built correctly, though. And she comes with some good survival. So overall, that should not be a big issue. Now, when we're looking at her, one other thing that you really want to note is going to be her ace. I usually talk about those first, but it's because it's something extremely important in her case. She is considered one of the best aces in Rainbow in game and one of the best aces for PvE in game because increasing support passive skill effects by 12%, we don't care about the second half, is ridiculously powerful. This means, for example, if in the front line you have a lot of passives, line buffs, you're going to be increasing those. And it doesn't sound like something that's much, 12%, but I'm just going to give a simple example. Jiho is going to be increasing penetration by 20%. At this 12%, that means that we've already gone up 2.8%. Now, I also run an Armel in frontline, that's another 2.8%. So just by switching this ace, I've been able to give through only 2 line buffs who already exist another 5% penetration. This is going to give me more speed, this is going to give me more crit, this is going to give me an advantage in all the reflex wars, and even for the backline, it is true that we lose a little bit of life because of the way this totem works, because usually we're used to a 30% or at least a 22, 23, depending on what you're running, but instead you're going to be able to increase all the lifeline buffers, so it's actually more than 30% in backline, so you're not even losing anything serious there. So again, her and Duran are the best rainbow aces. For monos, we can all agree it's going to be the penetration aces or the DR aces. And then there's a bunch of special cases. For example, in light, if you run Vondry, there's the speed ace. But those are special cases and you know, again, exactly what you're doing. So I hope this helps you guys understand the updated version of Jiho. Again, this is pretty much my build, and just consider that I'm throwing where are these silly stones once again? I can't even find, like, I'm going to be sticking one of these. It's already starting well with the sub, so that's going to be what's going to be in the last slot, and that's pretty much what I'm going to be running. So I might be able to put some gameplay later on. I was asked to do the review, so I just did it first. Have a good day, guys.